Good morning. I'm going to describe to you how our department has transformed from a very risk-averse position on large wood to being a leader in the realm of large wood use in transportation projects. This simple map shows Washington State highway infrastructure and locations where it crosses or is adjacent to streams and rivers. This map represents these locations with blue dots, but as you can see, they are nearly continuous along many highways. In fact, about 1,600 miles cross or lie adjacent to streams and rivers, which is more than any other type of landowner or land manager. And yet the department is not a land management agency. Our infrastructure crosses multiple watersheds and both affects and is affected by those watersheds in a number of ways. Many of our routes are what I call legacy alignments, routes that started out as deer trails, hunting trails, wagon trails, and so forth. These locations were not particularly sensitive to geomorphic and biologic processes, and yet there are now 4, 6, or 8 lane highways along them. Because we have been forced to deal with the effects of such legacy sites and land use practices, we have used wood in various ways cautiously to mitigate degradation, scour, and channel avulsions in more sustainable ways. In addition, fish passage barriers are a legacy of prior insensitivity for aquatic systems. Our requirement to correct fish passage barriers has contributed greatly to the department's embrace of wood. Now, I don't need to describe why using wood in stream restoration is a good thing. You all know that. But it has taken some time for this department to understand the value and to accept some of the uncertainty in wood design and behavior. When I first started at the department, the state hydraulic engineer stated emphatically that WSDOT does not place wood in streams. Coming from the restoration world, this was a shock. However, during this time, WSDOT was already beginning to use large wood in special projects. I'll get to that later. So in 2007, large wood was used only in a few bank stabilization projects, but by 2009, an instructional letter, a supplement to our hydraulics manual, was produced to address some aspects of wood design. Then in 2010, the hydraulic manual included 3 little paragraphs on large wood. However, by 2016, a greatly expanded instructional letter was produced. And in 2019, a whole chapter on large wood was added to the hydraulic manual. Currently, WSDOT is the only state DOT whose hydraulic manual addresses the use of large wood. Later this year, interim guidance on large wood will be issued, incorporating lessons learned and new research. For a good pictorial examination of WSDOT's use of large wood, I recommend seeing Tammy Schmidt's poster in the poster session. So we do need those stinking logs now. Now there are several projects or types of projects where WSDOT uses large wood. Since the early 2000s, the Chronic Environmental Deficiencies or CED program has used wood. CED projects are sites that have had repeated issues that are stream or shoreline related. Then there is the Fish Passage Barrier Correction Program, which has the largest number of projects that incorporate wood. And as a subset of fish passage, or even some mitigation projects, we may use wood to achieve specific hydraulic and habitat functions. Lastly, we are increasingly using wood in emergency stabilization projects. Now we'll get into each of these in a bit more detail. The Chronic Environmental Deficiencies Program was created in 2001. And dozens of projects within the CED program have used wood in stream projects since then. You can see Jenny Dykstra's poster in the poster section about this. On the right side of this slide shows a highway with a major river, the Sauk River, migrating towards it. Several different treatments were attempted over the years, some under the CED program, but ultimately a more robust and continuous treatment was needed. So in 2019, we designed and built the structure shown on the lower right. This project incorporated about 400 feet of large wood at the toe of the bank. The riparian plantings have taken off, and as of now, you can't see the river at all from the highway. Additionally, the large wood has prevented any additional migration towards the highway at this location. This project on the Skagit River in North Puget Sound was constructed to prevent a meander in the river from entraining along State Route 20. Riprap had been added over decades in an ever lengthening span of rock. This project was featured in a presentation at this conference 7 years ago, actually. The photo on the left shows the site in 2010 with the leading edge of the meander migrating down valley. The default response at the time of adding more and more lengths of riprap was recognized as contributing to the entrainment of flow along the highway, as well as being poor habitat. The upper right photo shows a portion of the project as it was built in 2014 in the location where a side channel had begun to get entrained along the highway. The project included dolo timbers, which is a combination of concrete jacks and large wood. These elements provide roughness, distributing and absorbing shear stress and providing stability for the highway and racking and accumulation of wood floating down the river. The photo on the lower right shows how the structure has accumulated wood. The yellow dashed lines show approximate accumulation each year, with a very large accumulation of wood in November of last year. And if you look at the photo just above that, it shows the project just after it was built in 2014. Now, as of January 2022, the wood is 20 feet high in places, with one key piece that is 3.5 feet in diameter and over 100 feet long, and it sits at a minimum of 10 feet above the current water level. This project has worked well to protect the highway while contributing to aquatic habitat. Our largest use of wood these days is in fish passage projects. With hundreds of barriers to correct, we don't just correct passage, but provide partial habitat restoration. First and foremost, we determine what are the design objectives based on examination of the project reach. Ultimately, each log should have a specific purpose. We have established targets for wood that are based on the recommendations in the paper by Fox and Bolton in 2007, which remains the best source for data on wood occurrence in unmanaged streams. We try to minimize the use of anchors wherever possible. The fewer man-made elements in the system, the simpler the construction. We also try to mimic natural wood recruitment by adjusting log dip angle and orientation. However, this must be balanced with the need to have effective and persistent habitat function. All of these are subject to site constraints, limitations with physical space, potential for backwatering or erosion of adjacent properties. And not surprisingly, our sites often have considerable development around them. Now, a bit more on those wood targets. Our large wood targets are based on the recommendations for land managers in the Fox and Bolton paper. We use the recommended minimum volume per key piece tied to habitat zone and stream size as defined by bankful width. For key piece density, total wood volume, and total number of large wood pieces, we use the 75th percentile of measured wood, also tied to habitat zone and bankful width for our targets. Total wood volume includes both key and non-key pieces, is usually the dominating factor. And obviously, site constraints can reduce the wood metrics. To help with implementing these targets statewide and with numerous consultants and design build teams working on fish passage, we developed a spreadsheet called the Large Wood Metrics Calculator. This implements the targets of Fox and Bolton and allows the user to simply enter the stream regrade length, bankful width, and habitat zone. This and other project information is entered into the salmon colored boxes. This spreadsheet produces the target values for the site shown at the bottom. It will also determine if a certain size of log is a key piece or not. Now, importantly, we include the length of the stream crossing structure measured in the upstream downstream direction within the total stream regrade length, even though we don't actually place wood in culverts as a rule. Once the targets are determined, the user can adjust the log dimensions and quantities in the yellow boxes based on the project objectives and iteratively meet the target values. Now, I don't expect you to follow the fine print in this spreadsheet. This is just meant to show a screenshot of this tool that we've made available. This results in a large amount of wood, and it may be challenging to fit at a project site. We encourage creativity in log placement to get as close to the targets as possible. This might include placing wood beyond the channel regrade limits, using existing trees or other features to provide stability. Another tool that we use is the concept of mobile wood. Our default design discharge for large wood is the 100-year flood. Mobile wood we define as becoming mobile at a design discharge less than the 100-year flood. The design flood for mobile wood will be dependent upon habitat objectives and site constraints, such as downstream culverts. Here are a couple of current examples of large wood placement in a stream crossing setting. Note that these are both preliminary. In both of these examples, at least one large wood metric was not met, although the key piece metrics were met. The amount of channel regrade, especially in the example on the left, was very small, limiting the physical space available to place wood. This design uses mobile wood in the culvert to increase the wood volume closer to the targets. Both designs feature wood placed outside the regrade limits. As WSDOT has embraced large wood, we have also found special uses to achieve hydraulic and habitat functions. We've used it for floodplain reconnection, as the example photo on the right. Also, we're beginning to use large wood in alluvial fan settings to help attenuate sediment transport through stream crossings. One of the presentations in this session will direct that aspect directly. I want to provide a bit more detail on some of these special uses. At Swat Creek over in Kittitas County, we partnered with the Mid-Columbia Fisheries Enhancement Group. Their goals included floodplain reconnection, and they recognized the potential savings in mobilization costs by teaming with WSDOT. They provided most of the trees, while WSDOT provided the design and construction oversight on a half a mile of stream. WSDOT replaced 2 fish passage barriers with passable structures, including 1 bridge. We installed over 200 pieces of large wood and a half-mile stream channel. A portion of the project is shown on the left. The log jams appear scattered throughout the reach, but each are designed to be fully engaged with all flows and able to rack debris and encourage sediment deposition. As can be seen on the right, the wood takes up substantial portions of the existing channel, as well as the constructed channel closer to the new structures. With sediment transport fully restored at the upstream crossing, the log jams will encourage deposition and eventually encourage overnight flows. This project has been designed, but unfortunately construction has been delayed until later this year. This is Centennial Creek in Snohomish County, a relatively small stream. The project involved creating a new stream channel alignment on a somewhat steep slope of 7%. We designed a step pool stream to transition the stream into the adjacent low energy reach, with the inclusion of wood in the water column to partition shear stress moving down through the step pool system. The plan view on the right shows a series of step pool couplets with wood embedded. On the left is a detailed diagram of an individual step showing the wood configuration. I can't go into too much detail in the time we have, but our goal was to reduce the shear stress, and feel free to ask questions later. Now I want to make a mention of use of wood in emergency highway stabilization projects. This is a prime example of how institutional inertia can limit innovations. We didn't really know it was feasible until we tried it. The agency is obligated to mitigate for low quality habitat created by riprap bank repairs. We recognize the value in making projects that were considered self-mitigating, where we did not have to design, permit, and construct a second project just for mitigation. In addition, we have had experience with CED projects, and there is recognized hydraulic value in wood use on emergency projects. We now have a number of projects that were completed during the rainy season that do include wood. We've realized it's feasible when sources are in place and low flow conditions are possible. This example from west of Olympia involved a nearly vertical bank 30 feet high with the highway right above it, shown on the left. On the right is a photo taken last fall at the site, showing that while there is a lot of rock, there's also a lot of wood where it counts. Another example is in the far north of Washington State, a site on the North Fork of the Nooksack River that was close to the highway being taken out. The 2 images on the left show the flood damage and a proposed emergency repair. We placed a series of logs in alternating amounts of projection, ballasted by large rock and then topped with planted soil lifts. The photo in the upper right corner shows the completed project during a flood in November 2019. The root was just visible above the water surface. The site experienced a greater than 50-year flood event last November and performed very well. The adjacent upstream ridge, however, was not part of the 2017 project and experienced scour and saturation failure. We just finished stabilizing that section a couple weeks ago with a continuation of the log and rock revetment. So looking at the future, we anticipate using a lot of wood, as our fish passage projects and ongoing CED projects will require it. We're commissioning new research on hydraulics and wood, particularly scour around wood. We're investigating adopting new techniques such as log jacks and dola timbers in special situations. In emergency situations, our response includes the consideration, at least, of large wood and likely its incorporation. We are also currently designing buried wood structures to mitigate degradation potential, and also assessing the use of wood, both small and large wood, within stream crossing structures. More on that next year, maybe. I'll close by showing this emergency repair on the White River in Washington, doing what we had hoped for, trapping sediment and wood debris so that hopefully it will be self-sustaining. Thank you, and I will welcome questions.